The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is about to reach its 2-year anniversary, and with that, I finally want to take a moment to talk about the game. You see, I was kind of late to Breath of the Wild. About a year late. I was constantly told to wait to get a Switch to play it, which doesn't really make too much sense considering the Switch version is technically a port. But after waiting long enough, I was fed up and I picked up the game on Wii U. Once I started playing, I was super excited. I got through the cutscene in the Shrine of Resurrection, and I ran out into the Overlook to see the title card. And then for about 2 weeks, I didn't put the game down. I was honestly skeptical of how I would feel about Breath of the Wild. I'd only played very little at my friend's house and seen very few clips. I wanted the game to be fresh, but I was always wondering, how could this game compare to the old Zelda style? How do you make Zelda work in an open world? Why is Link's tunic blue? Well, luckily all those questions were answered by just playing. The open world style suits a Zelda game so much more than I thought. In fact, I love the style so much that I hope it carries over into future titles. While Ocarina still remains my favorite Zelda game of all time for its pure fantasy roots, I think Breath of the Wild follows close behind. Hyrule feels fresh and vast, still with famous locations we know and love like Lon Lon Ranch, now in ruins, or the quaint Kakariko Village, while balancing with plenty of new locations like the Hebra Mountains or Hitino Village. Hyrule has this free-range life to it, with creatures and people openly walking about and living in its world, yet it also has a sense of cozy familiarity that draws you in. It calls back to the open-world feelings of Morrowind, with no loading screens between villages or the outside world, and with momentous beauty and scale. The world never becomes tiresome. A Zelda game that doesn't follow a linear path was also new, but so welcomed. Having Link do side quests and play minigames just adds to the world and characters. People are no longer just static NPCs, but actually have lives and things to do, perhaps things for you to do. You can shield surf, or melt some ice, or do horseback archery, do the master trial. You can shield surf. Okay, I can only think of a few examples off the top of my head, but the world offers a large variety of things to do outside of the main quest and side quests. One of my favorite aspects of the game is the amount of customization offered by the game. So many unique weapons and armors to use and upgrade through fairy fountains, and with the DLC and amiibos you can unlock even more exclusive gear, like Midna's helmet, or Majora's mask, or Tinkle's gear. And all this stuff isn't just given to you, you have to solve riddles or do actual quests to find them. It adds more gameplay for little bits of fan service, and I love it. The amount of combinations and sets you can actually make is astounding, and a lot more fresh than the always classic Master Sword and Hylian Shield. Need some flair and bite? Use elemental weapons. Want a heavier strike? Use a two-handed weapon. Need to deflect Guardian beams? Guardian Shield's got your back. And the different types of armor have different benefits, like upping your climb speed, letting you swim up waterfalls with the Zora gear, or Guardian resistance with the Guardian armor. Even many of the DLC items add benefits. For example, Midna's helmet offers Guardian resistance, or the Phantom Ganon gear can make you sneaky. Weapons and equipment breaking can be frustrating at times, but offers a fresh and unique management system that I really enjoy as a fundamental part of the game. Shrines replace the traditional dungeons, and have some enemies, but serve mainly as puzzles and little mind tests. They have hidden treasures that can be discovered and ultimately supply so much of the fun that can be discovered using the Sheikah Slate abilities. That's another huge thing, the Sheikah Slate. The Sheikah Slate withholds all your different abilities gained throughout the game. Magnesis, to magnetize metal objects. Stasis, freezes an item in time. Cryosis, creates ice pillars in water. The camera, takes pictures obviously, and the remote bomb, both a sphere and a cube. And, if you have the Champions Ballad DLC, you can get access to the Master Cycle. Horses? Nah, it's about motorcycles. The Slate changes gameplay in a very unique and fun way. It builds the lore with the Sheikahs and eliminates the need to constantly buy things like bombs. Speaking of the bombs, the cubes have their stationary uses, and the regular spherical ones can roll and be taken by gusts of wind, and being able to activate them makes them much less of a danger, and more of a puzzle piece, which I love. The Slate also features the map, in which you can fast travel from, and with the DLC you can view how you traveled throughout the entire game, the photo album, and the Hyrule Compendium! It's an encyclopedia. You take pictures and you add them to the encyclopedia. It's pretty cool. So, that's pretty much Breath of the Wild. An absolutely stellar game, a new twist on an old formula, and countless hours of fun and adventure. So why does the ending suck so much? Look, I know it's a new twist on the Zelda story, and I like a lot of it. The memories with Zelda and the champions is so cool, revisiting places from your past to uncover the history between you and Zelda. As we start to have the story pieced together, it's as if we remember it with Link, and that's a cool concept. And I like the idea of the Divine Beast being controlled by the champions, each to their own region, and they stand tall, protecting Hyrule, but in the end, the threat at hand is nothing to write home about, and you fight the same boss in this game too many times. All the different versions of Ganon grow tiresome. They aren't necessarily difficult, but they have very little variation, and they're just annoying. Even in the Champions Ballad DLC, you fight these bosses again, just with a specific loadout that you can't change. Of course, this new jump in format would be met with classic Ganon, but there could have been an extra character added. Ganondorf was in Twilight Princess, but the main villain was Zant. Yuga was the main villain in A Link Between Worlds, and he merged with Ganon. There was something more unique that could have been done for a more grand experience. Not saying that the game isn't grand already, don't kill me. I guess I could chalk this up to time constraints and how long the game was delayed, but still, I think there could have been more to it rather than rehash. The basis of the main story is that Zelda and all the champions, including Link, have been defeated by Calamity Ganon in the Great War 100 years before the events of the main game. Link was brought to the Shrine of Resurrection as a last resort, knowing he was the chosen knight. Zelda then hid the Master Sword away and worked to contain Ganon at Hyrule Castle over the last 100 years. Link basically awakens and has to reawaken the Divine Beasts, which I actually think is optional, and defeat Ganon once again. This is a pretty standard storyline for a Zelda game, and like I said, it adds a lot of flair and likable characters. The champions, Mipha, Daruk, Urbosa, and Revali are all unique characters of the different mainstay races in the Zelda universe, and all add something to the story. Mipha, the kind and gentle healer who clearly has feelings for Link. Daruk is the celebratory and fraternalistic tank. Urbosa is the wise mother-like figure who watches for trouble. And Revali is the cocky ace who thinks Link has to prove himself a hero. The idea of diverse representation and a bunch of different unlikelies forming an ultimate force against evil is really smart. Then you grow to like the champions and see their versatility and persistence, and it becomes all the more upsetting when they fail. It's beautiful story writing, and... wait a second. Zelda did Infinity War? Thanos Ganon. So, all of that is fine and dandy. I like the basis of the story, but the ending is just so... rushed feeling and unepic. So, after all your triumphs, you reach the sanctum of Hyrule Castle, only for Ganon to break free and destroy the floor of the castle. Link and Ganon fall into a pit below the castle where they... This is the same boss fight again! What frickin'... Why? Why did you do this? He's got the same frickin' attacks! There was clearly so much love put into the scenery and art of this battle. I mean, Ganon looks freaking terrifying, but they couldn't manage to change up the mechanics even a little. It's arrows, parrying, and reflecting lasers, which has been done again and again in every boss fight in the game. When the overworld bosses like Stone Talus or even Hinox offer more gameplay variety than your main villain, I think you have a bit of an issue. But this part of the fight isn't even the worst. No. Get ready for this. Dark Beast Ganon. He's cool, right? Wrong. 2 out of 10. He's a bad boss. He has got to be one of the most disappointing boss faces I've ever faced. Do you remember Ocarina of Time? Look, remember back in the 90s. Remember when you were a little kid playing on 64? Remember when you defeated Ganondorf and thought it was all over just for Ganon to show up? He was all dark and scary and brooding. So, like, that was epic. And how did you defeat him? You stabbed him in his skull! It was awesome! Dark Beast Ganon is defeated by a few pricks of the bow of light which Zelda gives you in some glowy holes. Then, in typical Zelda fashion, he has a glowy eye he exposes. But wait! You need an updraft! So he uses his one attack that you can easily dodge, use the updraft, so you shoot that eye and the fight is over. He barely moves, his attack is one stationary laser, and he's defeated in a few minutes. This amazing game, this absolutely amazing game, is capped off with a lame and virtually danger-free boss fight, which feels so unjustified. With a game like Morrowind or Skyrim, heck, even Ocarina of Time, you feel like you've gained the strength over the course of playing to take on the final boss, to prove you're stronger. But with Breath of the Wild, I don't get that. You're so loaded up on overpowered weapons, items, and food that a boss fight with no danger has the same feeling as a fetch quest. It's dull and tedious. Look, this doesn't downgrade my feelings or experience with Breath of the Wild. It's still a gem of a title, but I really wanted more out of this game we waited 6 years for. The game builds up Ganon to be this super powerful entity. He killed all the champions, encapsulated the castle, and sent Hyrule into ruin. Yet for all the talk, he just doesn't live up. You know, I think Pro Jared has the perfect analogy.
It's like knowing a gorgeous woman since childhood and you've always had a crush on her and admired her, and one day she says, "By the way, I once kicked a dog so hard, his head spun around like a rotor blade."
That's the boss fight. But what about the actual conclusion of the story? It's not much better, to be honest. Zelda appears out of the blight and stands there next to Link. She basically just tells you, hey, like, I knew you were the chosen one, but like, do you still remember me? Do you really remember me? And I really like that part of it. It makes you question if doing all you did is worth it. Did you do it for her? Did you do it for the people? Did you want to prove yourself? Like, that's great. It leaves a lot to question. How could they ruin that? By extending it with an extra unnecessary sequence. Friggin' come on! Link and Zelda stand among a hill with the castle all safe in the back, and she talks about how there's much to do to repair the kingdom, like it wasn't obvious. Then she says she's okay, that she has to do it without her powers. Why do they need to tack on the self-acceptance bit? Look, you couldn't harness the power at first, but then you proved yourself when it was needed most. Your plan saved the kingdom, putting Link away, hiding the Master Sword. You did this! It makes no sense! There is no need for this, no need to show Zelda is strong character for accepting her true self when she didn't really fail anyone and she always was strong. Even before the Great Calamity, she had good ideas and was resilient and tenacious, signs of a good leader. This tacked-on bit is so unnecessary. Zelda's basis as a leader or character were never seated in her powers. She needed them to fend off the Calamity, and that's it. Also, I should mention that this ending right here is the true ending, which means collecting all the memories, defeating all the Divine Beasts, and getting the Master Sword. All that effort is rewarded with this clip, which just doesn't feel necessary or justified. Zelda showed that she was strong just by having the courage to fend off Ganon for 100 years. And powers or not, we know she'll lead fine. And maybe the self-acceptance bit is a good moral, but maybe it's a better idea to leave the player doubtful, just like Link and herself. They don't know what the future holds, and maybe that's a good thing. Think about a book like The Lorax. The end of the book leaves kids questioning if the kid decides to plant the tree and start anew, or just keep living knowing what led the world to pollution. The movie tacked on a happy ending to tie it up for the kiddies at home. Honestly, we should ask more of the work we're given, I think. And I completely comprehend the hero's journey in classic fantasy story that Breath of the Wild and the Zelda franchise as a whole endorse. But with a game as grand, beautiful, fun, fantastic, and engaging as Breath of the Wild, I wanted more mystery, more to be left in the dark, maybe for a sequel, and maybe I wanted to be left questioning. Look, Hyrule has faced many threats throughout the series, from sorcerers to witches to shadows. So, I leave you to think about this. What if in this game, the threat was that the hero doesn't know what he fights for? What does it cost him? How will it affect him? A lot more intriguing, is it not?